didn't take a lot of grief, but anytime you put up the name Colin Kaepernick in a question and put it up on a show, there's going to be people who are going to be all over you for bringing up a subject that, in their opinion, is no longer valid on sports radio because he's not good enough or whatever the case may be. David was the one that came up with the question. I thought it was a brilliant question given the times that we're in right now. And I don't know if anybody else paid attention, but this question seemed to carry on past the Miller and Moulton show. In fact, such a good question that it was asked on a Yahoo Finance interview with Drew Brees. And Drew Brees doubled and tripled down on standing for the national anthem.
Yes. He reiterated his stance and his response from back in 2016.
And let me tell you that it did not go well when he repeated it from 4 years ago.
Was not well received.
And by not well received, it was crushed by most every NFL player, including several teammates.
Who took to social media and, didn't hold back.
No.
I mean, his star wideout, Michael Thomas, took to social media, but Malcolm Jenkins, who was a Saint, then an Eagle, back being a Saint, and Malcolm Jenkins, very much a leader, particularly when it deals with off-the-field issues with the players in the NFL. And Malcolm Jenkins with two emotional posts. And it will be very interesting to see where Drew Brees goes from here.
Well, that's a great point, David, because the biggest Drew Brees news this offseason has been he is going to replace Chris Collinsworth on NBC whenever that time comes, or studio host, or whatever the hell he's going to do for NBC. But he is the man in waiting to be their NFL analyst voice for a generation. That's what they're hoping. They're hoping that they've got their guy. They've got their Tony Romo, and they're riding off into the sunset with them.
Correct. Brees signed a long-term deal with NBC. Now, just very quickly, Collinsworth kind of stayed in the bullpen for like 6 years until John Madden retired. And so, there's no guarantee that they're going to push Collinsworth out right away. But yeah, Drew Brees is going to be the guy. I mean, Mike Tirico and Drew Brees are now lined up to replace Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth at some point in time and be the faces and the voices of the NFL on NBC for a generation. Yeah. And so there were some people that were wondering whether or not, based on the beating he was taking yesterday, whether or not Drew should walk a year early. I think that's
there are a lot in the media wondering if he should still get the job with NBC.
Well, it's signed.
Oh, I know.
It's signed.
I understand, but there's a lot of language in contracts that you can get out of.
Well, he didn't do anything to violate his contract. I mean, he didn't violate the morals clause of his contract just because you have a stance on a social issue.
I understand, but NBC will start getting heat for this when they hire
him. They've already gotten it. Oh, yeah. They got it by late lunch yesterday. Oh, there's no doubt that Drew and NBC and Drew's people and what have you. I mean, Drew's got to figure out how it is he's going to handle this. Is he going to double and triple down? Is he going to start the apology tour?
Sure didn't seem like it the way he spoke yesterday. I'd be shocked.
Well, my guess is he's going to try to thread a needle here.
Exactly.
My guess is he's going to, talk about an open dialogue with his teammates, and he's going to do some listening, and he'll, keep an open mind, blah, blah, blah. I also think he'll try to say that the two issues are separate to him. That's what I think he'll try to do. I don't know if he'll be able to pull it off. It was fascinating. There was a rally, a protest, whatever it is you want to describe it as. It was peaceful in New Orleans last night. And at one point, now remember, this is New Orleans. Drew Brees is a hero. in New Orleans. Drew Brees was there post-Katrina. Drew and his family have called New Orleans home. They don't live elsewhere in the offseason. He has raised millions and done a staggering amount for the surrounding communities in New Orleans for 14 years.
By all accounts and by everybody, Drew Brees is as close to a great guy as there is in the league. Nice person, does a lot for charity. He's way out of bounds with what he said yesterday, in my personal opinion. I know a lot of you probably think he hit the nail right on the head. I think you're wrong. I think it's tone deaf in today's world to say what he said. Tone deaf.
We'll get to the answer of our poll question yesterday, and we could tell just how many of you agree in step with what Brees said yesterday. But at this protest early in the evening in New Orleans last night, a chant emerged of F. Drew Brees, and that became the chant for a few minutes. At a rally in New Orleans, Drew Brees. Mark, you went to a Saints game in New Orleans in the last couple years. How many people, what percentage of Saints fans, I think it is a high jersey wearing crowd.
It's it's very much Pittsburgh. It's very much Green Bay. Yes, it's a diehard town. I mean, it's the only way you can describe it. It's a college atmosphere, for crying out loud. It's great. Let's just say for a number, 30% of the people are wearing jerseys. Of that 30%, well over half, probably close to 75% of those are wearing Drew Brees jerseys.
Yeah. You just see number 9
everywhere.
So this is big news across the NFL because he's a superstar. He's a Hall of Famer to be. I mean, this is the guy who could end up. I mean, it's him and Brady right now, neck and neck for a couple of the all-time passing records, which may actually last for an hour and a half when they're done. I mean, you might get the Ryans and the Staffords or whoever of the world that may eventually track them down, but these records might last 8 to 10 years. And so Drew Brees, who also is supposed to be the face of one of the major broadcast networks in their NFL coverage going forward for the next, damn near generation. I mean, he's 40. I mean, how long can he broadcast for? I mean, if he's any good at it, he could have a 25-year run easy. And so Drew Brees caught up in the events of the last 10 days and the repercussions going all the way back to Colin Kaepernick and his kneeling in the summer of 2016, which led us to our poll question yesterday, which was, in light of recent events, have you changed your tune at all concerning Colin Kaepernick? Yay, nay, or no, because I already agreed with him in the first place.
7.6%, David. Those are the people that changed their mind. The voting's still open for a few more minutes. We had 225 votes. Just over 7.6%. 7.6% changed their mind.
So 1 out of 13 of you have changed your opinion concerning Colin Kaepernick based on recent events. 1 out of 13. How does the other 92+% break down?
55% are in the no category and 38% are in the I supported him from day one category.
Okay. Now, what's important to note here is that, our poll question, the majority of those that responded said, no, I've changed my tune. Well, neither's Drew Brees. And this is, the New York Times, not to get political here, but the New York Times is in some hot water with basically their base today. Their left of center readership. They're in trouble because they printed an op-ed from a conservative Republican senator in which he said, basically, send in the tanks. All right, we need to restore law and order here. And there, people are canceling their subscriptions, and the Times is really under. Yesterday for the New York Times was as bad a day as it was for Drew Brees. And the New York Times is trying to say it's called an op-ed page, not a agree with page, not a me-ed page. You present various opinions here. It's an opinion section. You decide whether you agree or not. He is a sitting senator. He wanted to get this point across. We said we'd be more than happy to print it. And so, I am on the side of the New York Times in this one. We don't have to agree, but I do think we should discuss. Come on, we do sports talk radio. We do talk radio for a living. How could you or I be against the sharing of opinions and the discussing of them? That would seem to be the definition of hypocritical, or even go so far as to say stupid. And so now here's Brees. And that's why, to me, it is interesting. First off, Mark, I think he has enough status. If he wants to triple down, he can. And he can get away with it. I really believe that. I believe it.
First
off, doesn't say it's not going to hurt him.
No, it's going to hurt him. He can triple down because, one, when we start playing football, the New Orleans Saints are going to be a really good football team.
First game of the year, by the way, Brady at Brees.
And winning cures all evils. But, David, right now, they're picked to win the division. I think they're a game or a game and a half better than Tampa in the over-unders.
A lot of people look at New Orleans as maybe the best team in the NFC.
Yes, I know. And I just wonder when teammates... Drew Brees can double and triple down. And the media is never going to kill Drew Brees because Drew Brees has done too much good to have that knocked off over this stance. The locker room, David, is a different story.
Well, and to me, this is the fascinating subplot for not just the Saints, but quite frankly, not just 31 other locker rooms, but 130 locker rooms in college and or 30 locker rooms, or 22, I guess it'll be in the NBA. And you know what I'm saying. I mean, is this going to linger? It's been 10 days now in our country, but let's face it, we've had other issues, controversies. Eventually we pack up, we go back home, we move on with our lives, and then we see whether or not something has a shelf life. And Mark, I guess what I'm wondering is, do we think, and based on something you and I said yesterday, I think we believe the answer is yes, because you and I believe there's going to be a lot of kneeling this year in the NFL.
A ton. I've said it all along. I misspoke yesterday, flat out misspoke when I said it'll happen at college games. If college players are on the sidelines for the anthem, which they are typically not, I do believe players will kneel. I sincerely believe that. But I was getting ahead of myself because I'm trying to think, and I spent about an hour after the show trying to think of other college games. Do I ever remember being any team being out there? So I don't, the college, David, I'm telling you, if players are on the sideline for a high school game this year, you're going to watch high school players kneel.
Well, and I do think you're going to see more members of the band who are kneeling.
Yes.
Like you only saw a handful who did it.
And cheerleaders.
3+ years ago, right. I do think, believe me, in 2016 and 2017, we were paying very close attention as the anthem was being played as to whether or not there was a band member of an SEC school who was taking a knee. Believe me, we were looking for it. And there was not a one. And I don't think that will be the case this year.
Neither do I.
Miller and Moulton. So a fascinating poll question yesterday. Wet your finger, put it up in the air. 3+ years later, based on recent events, you changed your tune at all about Colin Kaepernick and what it is that he claims that he was about, and only about 8% of you have changed your tune. Otherwise, those opinions from 3-4 years ago, whether you're against Colin or whether you were for Colin, well, they are etched in stone. And Mark, I wonder, will there be a public opinion going forward that tries to ask this same question? Whether it's about Kaepernick or whether it uses the police brutality or however it is it gets phrased. But asking people essentially, hey, from one election cycle to the next, all right, have you changed your tune on this? And what will the percentage be? Because right now, if you look at all the media, all right, it seems as if there's this overwhelming feeling of change. All right, people, all right, I've seen the light, so to speak. I'm going to think about things differently. I'm going to do things differently. Well, the first time that we wet our finger and put it up in the air and just tried to gauge the winds of change, 7.7%.
Right. And, ultimately, David, there's still one news station. And since I got DirecTV, they have one great channel that I really enjoy. It's the News Mix. I get CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and BBC News on there. And I play this little game where I can take the voice and move it, and I go, the world is ending. Everything's great. The world is ending. Everything's great. And then I flip it to MSNBC and say, the world has ended. And that's how my little game ends. But in watching the side-by-side captions several times a day, David, it's pretty obvious why the poll questions are the way they are. If you watch and are locked into one side, I don't think you've changed one bit. And I'll ask you this question. You can answer it after the break. But on Twitch, we were asked, so are we just assuming that kneeling for the anthem is more popular in locker rooms than in the general population? I would answer yes by a landslide, considering that the NFL locker room is predominantly black. And in our country, I believe that African Americans make up somewhere around 13, 14% of the population.
Yeah.
So,
kneeling will be a lot more popular
yes.
Inside locker rooms than they will be in the general public. A lot more. And that may be ultimately where this issue lasts the longest. I mean, America may have well moved on by the fall. I mean, let's face it. That's a long time from now. We have very short attention spans.
I know. It is an election year. I have trouble seeing that we're going to move away from this that quickly, though.